Hey guys, it's Johnny again, and for this week's lesson we're going to take a look at some double stops. If you're not familiar with what a double stop is, it's basically just playing any two notes simultaneously. Pretty simple. This first lick we're going to take a look at is actually a rhythmic example over an A7 chord. It sounds like this. Pretty simple but pretty effective. We're going to start off with this open A position. Pluck the open A with your pick downstroke, and then with your middle and ring finger on your right hand, pluck the 2nd fret, D and G. And everything we do with this lick, everything on the A string is going to be a downstroke with your pick, and everything on the D and G strings are going to be with your ring and middle finger on your right hand. So from there, open A again, and then go 3-4. Back to your double stop, open A, and then we're going to go 4 on your D, 2 on your G, back to your 2nd fret D and G. So that's the first portion of the lick, and that's really effective by itself. But the next portion, we're going to start off the exact same way, and instead of this, we're going to do this. What we're doing here is approaching the flat 7 and the 3rd of your A chord, approaching that from a half step down. So we're going to be on the 4th and 5th fret, D and G, pluck that, and then move it up a half step. And that gives you your flat 7 and your 3rd of your A7 chord. So those two parts together. From there, start it off the exact same way again. When you get to this 4 and 2 on your D and G, hit the open A, and then go 5 and 2. Open A, 4 and 2, back to your open position on the 2nd fret. We're going to end it with 3, 4 on your A, and then back to that double stop on the 2nd frets. So start that one off really slow and just cycle it over and over again until you build up speed. And the last thing I want to point out about this is with this style of country rhythm, everything should be very staccato, and what staccato means is short and detached. So instead of letting everything ring into each other, you want to cut the notes off as quick as you can. So that does it for the first example. So for this next example, I want to cover something that I use often with my lead and rhythm playing, and that's approaching chord tones from a half a step down. We covered this briefly in the previous example, where we approached our flat 7 and our 3rd from a half step down. Only with this, we're going to be using all 4 chord tones out of an A7 chord, and that's your 3rd and your 5th and your root, your flat 7 and your 3rd, your 3rd and your 5th, and your 5th and your flat 7. So if you play those double stops together, you definitely hear an A7 chord, but it doesn't sound very musical. So what we're going to do is just approach these double stops from a half step down to get this sound. Sounds more musical to me. So we're going to start off with the open A string, and then take your 3rd fret A, 1st fret D, and slide that up a half step, again into your 3rd and your 5th degree of the A chord. Back to your open A, and then slide into your 2nd fret D and G from a half step down. So you're going from 1 to 2. From there, open A, and do this little lick little move that we learned in the previous example where we're sliding into our flat 7 and our 3rd. So it'll be from the 4th and 5th fret G and D, or D and G strings, up a half step. Next, open A, then 5 and 4 on your G and B strings. Move that up a half a step. Open A, and then slide into 9 and 8 on your G and D, or G and B. 9 and 8, slide into that from a half step down. And you can either slide into these chord tones, or you can pick every note. You get more of a staccato, kind of a percussive feel if you pick every note. But you pick up more speed if you slide. Totally up to you, just depends on what you're going for. So you can end this however you want. A little bluesy lick like that. Or you can use this idea to slide into the next chord tone. So if our next chord is a D7 chord, if you look at how we ended this lick, if you take that up 2 frets, then you've got an F sharp and an A, which happens to be your 3rd and your 5th of your D chord. And even though I don't have any backing chords going on behind me, you can still hear those chord changes when it changes from A to D. And from there, you can do whatever you want. You can play some blues licks over that, or you can keep this idea going and just slide into chord tones out of your D7 chord. And then back into your A. Or if it goes to the E, same thing. And back to your A. So with all of those slides, I was just approaching the chord tones out of a 7th chord from down a half a step. And going away from the double stop thing for a second, you can actually do that with your lead lines. Just approach chord tones from down half a step with 1 string at a time. So out of an A7 chord, sort of a little trick that I used to use to fake my way through jazz before I got into any of that stuff. So again, just pick any chord tones out of the chord you're over and approach it from down a half a step, whether it be 1 note at a time, 2, or even 3 notes at a time. So for the previous example, I more or less see that as an A7 arpeggio. Even though we're approaching chord tones from down a half a step, we're taking these non-chord tones, sliding them up into our actual chord tones, and these are the notes that really stick in your ear, are these chord tones that come together to create an A7 chord. So I'm pretty much just looking at this as a harmonized A7 arpeggio. So since that lick was arpeggio based, let's make this next lick based out of a scale. We're going to use our G7 scale that we discussed in our open string lesson and harmonize it in thirds, and then take those double stops and go down the neck to get a lick like this. So this whole lick is based out of this G7 scale, except for this slide right here. What we're doing with this is what we discussed in the previous example, just using double stops to slide into chord tones from a half step down. So back to the lick. We're going to start off on the 12th fret G and B string. Pick that with your middle and ring fingers. Pull that off to the open G and B strings, and then pluck your open G with a downstroke with your pick. That's going to be our pattern for almost the entire lick. Do that exact same thing down a whole step on your 10th fret G and B. Now you're going to be on 9 and 8 G and B. Take that down a whole step to 7 and 6. Now we're going to be on your 5th fret G and B string. Pick, pull, pick, and then slide into your chord tones. You're going to be sliding from your 3rd and 2nd fret G and B strings up a half step and then end with your root note, 5th fret D string. And you can hit this root note by itself, or you can keep the double stop thing going and harmonize it with the 4th fret G string. And once more up to speed. So for this next example, I'm going to do a few licks for you out of the key of D, and the first one's going to sound like this. Pretty simple standard lick. We're going to start on the D string 10th fret, and then do a double stop on the 7th fret G and B strings. And do that same thing again, and the rhythm on that's going to sound like this. From there, you're just going to go 10 on your D, 7 on your D, and back to 10, and that's the whole lick. The only thing that's going to change is the first time you do this, you're going to have this little pause in between the first note and the double stops. After that, just keep the rhythm straight the entire time. And that's the first lick. This works over a D7 chord, and it's a great lick. It's really useful, but it's a little cliche. It's been done a lot, either this or some rhythmic variation of this lick. So what I did is I took this and I used it to come up with a few licks of my own based around this idea. And the first one's going to sound like this. And this still works over a D7 chord. It's a diminished 7 lick. And all we're going to do is change one note. We're going to take this middle note here on our G string, raise it from 7 to 8, and keep everything else exactly the same. So instead of this, we get this. And the cool thing about this lick is if you raise it 3 frets, go 3 frets higher, and do the exact same lick, it's still going to work because it's the exact same notes in a different order. Here we have F sharp, D sharp, C, and A. If we raise it up 3 frets, we have A, F sharp, D sharp, C. Raise it up another 3 frets, we have C, A, F sharp, D sharp. So you can raise or lower this lick 3 frets at a time, basically until you run out of frets. And so you can take it down as well. And so this works over your 4 chord. So, for example, we're in the key of A. In a standard blues or country progression, you go from A to D. And D is what's called the 4 chord. The reason being, it's on the 4th degree of your A major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's why it's called the 4 chord. So if you're walking from your A to your D, you can use this diminished 7 lick over the D chord, and it resolves perfectly back into your A. Let me play it in context so you can hear what I'm talking about. To my 4 chord. So you can hear how I use that little diminished double stop to resolve back into my 1 chord. So let me play it again up to speed. Pretty cool little trick. The second lick I'm going to show you out of the key of D, or over a D7 chord, this one's going to work anytime you have D7. That last one I showed you worked best if D is the 4 chord, but this time, anytime you have a D7, you can use this lick. It goes like this. And so the lick is going to start off by sliding from 9 to 10 on your D string and do this same double stop that we used for the first example, which is on the 7th fret, G and B strings. Slide that back down from 10 to 9 and do a double stop on the 5th fret, G and B string. And that's the entire lick. So you might have heard that I changed rhythms at the end. That's another really good trick to use over any style of music, whether it be country, metal, jazz, rock, pop, R&B, whatever it is. Take a lick that you're already familiar with and just change rhythms. So here, this is in 4 beats at a time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and so on and so forth. What I did is I changed it to work over triplets. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's a really good trick to use, like I said, not just over country music, but any style of music, is to take a lick you already know and just change rhythms. So that does it for our double stop lesson. Next week, for the final lesson in the series, we're going to go back to the world of rock and look at our pentatonic scale. See you guys then.